Thank you so much, sir. Well, my name is Ademolu Okuneye, Dr. Ademolu Okuneye.
Are very concerned about the state of affairs in our pluralistic country, Nigeria. Experience all over the world has shown that pluralistic countries that have survived as political entities are those that operate truly federal constitutions. Those pluralistic countries that failed to operate truly federal constitutions have largely disintegrated. If I may give just a few examples of these. Those that didn't operate pluralistic countries and disintegrated are countries like Yugoslavia, which broke up into 7 independent states, and Czechoslovakia. But those that operated truly federal constitutions and survived are India and Canada. So the Patriots have been concerned that the root cause of our current problems in Nigeria is the constitution that we operate. I don't need to go through the challenges facing our country. These are well known because the Patriots, like every Nigerian, has been aware of the challenges of insecurity in the country, the challenge of mass poverty, of unemployment, and of the dwindling sense of national unity in the country, and a host of other challenges. And so, the Patriots, in collaboration with the Nigerian Political Summit Group, decided to organize the summit that met here over the last 2 days. But before the meeting of the summit, there were zonal consultations organized by the Patriots. And here, Professor Anthony Killer has been recognized because he, as the chairman of the Advocacy and Mobilization Committee of the Patriots, has been largely responsible for organizing the zonal consultations. And in the zonal consultations, town hall meetings were held, consultations with leaders of various sections of the society in the zones were held, and ideas that were fed into the deliberations of the summit were generated. And so the summit had the benefit of these ideas and discussed a whole range of Nigerian affairs guided by the single wish to make Nigeria work better, to make Nigeria more united, to make Nigeria develop its potentials. I believe that you've been given copies of the communique of the summit. If you have not, I hope you will get copies before you leave here. But let me take you through some of the main areas of the communique, which records the resolutions adopted by the summit. The first and foremost resolution is that Nigeria needs a new constitution. Nigeria needs to return to the truly federal constitution with which it began its independence journey. The present 1999 constitution is not such a constitution. It's not suited to the needs of a pluralistic country like Nigeria. And the Patriots, of course, discussed how to actualize the new constitution that they are advocating. And they agreed that after the summit, these recommendations would be communicated to the presidency and the national summit, and that the president would be asked to send an executive bill to the National Assembly. And the executive bill should decide to have the National Assembly legislate for the creation of a constituent assembly, the appointment of a constituent assembly in which all parts of the country will be represented. And this constituent assembly would have as its primary task the formulation of the new constitution for the country. And after it has formulated the new constitution, it should be submitted to the people of Nigeria in a national referendum. And it's the endorsement of the new constitution in a national referendum that will confer legitimacy to the new constitution, as against the 1999 constitution, which lacks legitimacy because it was not drafted by the representatives of the peoples of the country, nor was it endorsed by the Nigerian people. You will see in the communique that the summit, apart from advocating return to a truly federal constitution, reached a number of recommendations as to what should be in the new constitution. The recommendations range from the devolution of powers to the federating units the new federating units to be agreed in the new constitution for the country. It would also touch on the legislature, that we should have a more cost-effective legislature, because at the moment the legislature that we have is unsustainably expensive. It involves the expenditure of over 70% of the national revenue on recurrent expenditure and the servicing of debt. So you will see in the communique that the summit recommended an inexpensive, or rather more cost-effective, legislature with powers devolved to the federating units. You will also see what the summit recommended about the administration of justice in the country. At present, the structure we have leads to overburdening of the courts, and the summit thinks that each federating unit should have a court hierarchy that leads to an appeal court where most issues would be adjudicated on, leaving the Federal Supreme Court to deal with serious constitutional issues and issues relating to the federating units and the federal government disagreements. And then you will also see that the summit thinks and recommended that the office, as it exists now, of the Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Federation should be separated, as is done in most countries. The Attorney General should be an appointee on non-partisan basis, as against the Minister of Justice, who would be appointed on a party basis. Again, you will see that the summit recommended a reform of our electoral system. We in the summit think that elections, all elections, should be held on the same day, in one day, because the current practice of staggered elections, it's very expensive and also prone to corruption and unhelpful influences. We also recommended that the elections should be not only be conducted in one day, as is done in countries like Brazil and Ghana, but also that the INEC should be mandated to transmit results electronically, and the use of bimodal accreditation system, BVAS, should also be mandated. And the summit thinks that independent candidates should be allowed to stand in elections. That is, independent of political parties, individuals who stand elections on their own personal merit. And again, that carpet crossing should be disallowed. A situation where people get elected on the platform of political parties and then they defect to other parties, that system should not be allowed to continue to exist. That once a person, he or she, decides to defect to another party, that the seat should unconditionally be declared vacant. And the summit also talked about the cost of governance. You will see that the summit is concerned about reducing the overall cost of governance, both in terms of capping the number of ministers, ministries, and agencies that should be created. And also you will see that the summit dealt with the issue of corruption and breach of public trust, as well as citizens' rights and empowerment initiatives. And summit also dealt with the issue of Nigerians in diaspora. Nigerians in diaspora are making very substantial contribution to development in terms of remittances to the country, and yet they do not have any opportunity to contribute to voting in elections. The summit thinks that the country should work to enable them in the future to be able to vote in the country's elections. The communique also deals with the national security architecture and strategy. And it was a matter of major concern to the summit that, for example, between May 2023 and April 2024 alone, that as many as 614,937 Nigerians were killed in the country. So the summit recommended that the security architecture be rejigged with the creation of coastal and border forces to help the police in checking the entrance to the country because of the very porous borders the country has, which has allowed entry into the country of criminals and so-called bandits from the Sahara region into the country. The summit also touched on the issue of secularity. A pluralistic country like Nigeria needs to enforce its secular character. in a country as hugely populated as India and has its diversity, secularity is an essential part of the Constitution, because in a multi-religious, pluralistic country that is desired for peace and stability. And again, in the rejigging of the security structure, the summit believes that the subnational, the federating units should have their own police force, which has often been referred to as state police. The summit believes that in devolving powers to the federating units, the power to create the police force should be there. And indeed, in devolving powers to the federating units, the new constitution should seek to return the country to the truly federal constitution with which, as I said, we started at independence. Because then the original 3, subsequently 4 regions of the country had their own separate constitutions. And we'd like to see a return to that. And the summit also recommended that we have true fiscal federalism, whereby the federating units should manage and control their resources and revenue, because there is no part of this country that is not endowed with resources that, if properly harnessed and managed, would see that the country develops and the welfare of the citizens taken care of. So these are taking you through some of the essential points in the communique of the summit, and I hope that when you've read them, you will, if you have any questions, put your questions to me and members, my colleagues on this high table. And again, my attention has just been drawn to